All right, parents, welcome to Senior Parent Night, Post-Secondary Planning. Glad that so many of you were able to join us. We thought that after doing this virtually and being forced to do it virtually last year, we had a higher attendance. So we thought we'd continue with the same format so that more parents can join us. So you guys are out running your students around with different activities, I'm sure, or coming on your way home from work. So hopefully you find this a convenient way to join the conversation. My name is Mandy Randall. I'm one of the school counselors here. I'm down on the first floor. And tonight I have joining me a few other counselors that are going to work the chat. So those counselors are Mr. Elias, so Mark Elias, Peggy Zimmer, Debbie Kimlinger, and Cindy McGonigal. So go ahead and ask if you have just general questions as I'm working through it. We should be able to answer most things before the end of the night, just in the presentation alone. But if you do have questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat. If there's specific questions to your student, then we would ask you to email your student's counselor directly on the side. So that I think is going to be just to leave the confidentiality of everybody's process intact. So we are recording this, so we'll put it up on the website when we're done and share the information with your friends. We saw all of your students last Wednesday. So they got all this information last Wednesday. And it is there for the taking in their Canvas page. So if you ask them to show you what we covered or reference it based on what you're hearing tonight, it is under Senior Seminar Term 1. So that's where you can find this information as well. Your students can reference it. All the resources, tools, links are there for them to make it pretty convenient. So as we go through this and you're like, oh, this seems like so much information, just know that they have it easily accessible to them in their Canvas page. And I'll show you that in just a minute. So we're going to get started. It should probably take us about 45 minutes to an hour. And we'll just move along. Like I said, put questions in the chat. Happy you're here. Thanks so much. All right, just as a reminder, if you're wondering who's your student's counselor, just take a quick look up here. It's by alpha last name. So you could be able to find your student's counselor. So if you need to write their name down because you think you might have to email a specific question to them, please do so. Take a little note here of who that counselor is for your student. We've had 2 new counselors this year in Brian Vasquez and Neely Kaufman. So if your students have a new counselor, it might be one of them. Everybody else has returned and are with us and have been. Tonight, the idea is that we cover all post-secondary pathways. So there's lots of options for students after they leave Wayzata High School. The mission of our school is to prepare all students for whatever they choose after high school. So whether it be a 4-year college, 2-year college, technical community college, gap year, and employment, military options, we have had different opportunities and activities in seminars throughout the years for them to look into all of these things. And so if you actually clicked here, I'll show you quickly. On this post-secondary pathways, you will be able to see the different resources that we've showed them through the years. So if you clicked on any of these, you'd be able to see at a glance what they offer. So what is an apprenticeship? You want to learn more about apprenticeships? You can find different ways to get involved in apprenticeships. I think something that's pretty interesting just by Wayzata data, if you look over here, the class of 2020, this is our school profile from them. 81% of them went to a 4-year college, 2-year college was 9% of our population. So really 90% of our students either attended a 2 or a 4-year college. And then you can see we had other students do different things. I also think what's interesting about this image on the right, in this graph, is that you will find our top 10 schools over the last kind of 9 years. And so often I think students and families are really surprised to find that Normandale, a community college, often lands in our top 10. So these are the schools that our students find themselves at upon graduation. So based on that, that's how we are going to kind of lead our conversation tonight. As I mentioned earlier, your students have this information in their Canvas page. So when you're helping them look for it, you can see that they can go to their Canvas page, click on Senior Seminar, and then inside that they'll find Term 1 and how to complete these applications. So, sorry. There we go. So we're going to cover the different steps to completing an application. I'm going to show you this timeline. Maybe this is a helpful thing to take a picture of, just so you have kind of a reference. I know the stress can get high. And so sometimes it is because we just don't have the information that we need. So the hope tonight is that you'll get all the information. I think the timeline is a great place to start with. So so hopefully students are starting to, figure out and solidify their list and then start working on applications. And for those that have November 1st deadlines, those would be just early action or early decision students. So most students apply regular decision, but if your student is applying early action, early decision, they will have an earlier deadline like a November 1st or November 15th deadline. So those students should certainly be working their way through the application process, including letters of rec, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Parents, for those of you this is your first student going through the college application process, you will need to mark your calendar for any time October 1st or after to fill out the FAFSA. So that's the base of financial aid packaging comes from that FAFSA application. And so that application opens up October 1st for you. For those of you that already have a student in college, you've already done this, and you just need to create a new PIN for your next student. As I mentioned, most application deadlines are December or January for that regular decision. And then come May 1st, that's National Declaration Day. So students need to determine which college they're going to attend and also notify that college. So completing the application. Applications we found mostly on the admissions page of the college themselves. So that's where we usually tell students to start. And on that application admissions page, they will tell you which application you can use. Is it just a school-based application, or some schools will allow the common application where you can fill out one application and apply to many schools. So one isn't more favorable than the other. You'll just want to see if your student's applying to more than one school, and those schools are on Common App. It just might make it easier to streamline their process through that Common App experience. Always look for an application checklist that'll include, what needs to be submitted and in what time frame. So again, time management, deadlines, organization are the key to surviving this with low stress. So keep that in mind as you're moving through that as your student. If you're noticing the stressors, help them go back to the basics. All right, what are our timelines? What are our deadlines? How are we going to get this done? So I mentioned common application. And the Common Application, like I said, accepts more than 900 colleges are on the Common App. So you could fill out one application and potentially apply to 900 colleges. That's never advised. Actually, the average that we talk to students about is between 4 and 6 schools, usually 2 safety schools, 2 target schools, and maybe 2 reach schools in their bucket of schools that they're pursuing. So there's a number of different sections. Each school is allowed to add their own supplements, which would be usually a writing component oftentimes. And so students just want to be mindful, like they can fill out the whole application, and then they want to check what they call the supplements box and see if that school has any supplements. The writing piece is always the hang up for students. It just takes the most time. So make sure that they at least check in with what that's going to look like early on. Your student will need to link their common application to Naviance. Naviance is the tool that we use to send all their materials. So we send transcripts, letters of recommendation, school profile, etc. through that. And so they need to link those for us. There are directions on the college application process page. So if you clicked on this link, you would see a drop down that would show you Common App. Here's how you link it. It's pretty straightforward. We also showed students in seminar how to do this. If you are using Common App, or your student is, make sure that they let their teacher know if they're using Common App, because there's an additional step that the teachers need to take on their end, additional form that they need to fill out. So make sure they do that. The University of Minnesota does take the Common App. So they have a Gopher App, their own application, or the Common App. It doesn't matter. One application is not preferred over another. So if you're using Common App, there's a place in there where you get to complete your courses and grades section. There's letters of recognition aren't required, and a Common App essay is not required. So applying to the University of Minnesota is a pretty straightforward process. Or you can use a Gopher application. The cool thing about the Gopher application is that if you fill that out and you're applying to other University of Minnesota schools, say Crookston or Duluth, Morris, etc., then after you submit your application to one University of Minnesota school, they will send your student an email saying, do you want to apply? Do you want to share your application with any of the other University of Minnesota system schools. And so you can do that easily too. All right, so as they're filling out the Common App or any application in that matter, because we're on a block schedule, this is where a lot of students get a little mixed up. So if you're watching, you might want to take a picture of your screen right now, because it will be a reference conversation for many students in regards to how do I enter our block scheduled classes into their application. So because our students finish out a whole year of a subject in just 2 terms, it gets a little funky. So when they're filling it out 2 terms, those 2 terms equals that full year of a subject. So like physical science, biochemistry, almost all of our core classes are typically 2 terms. But then we have elective classes, say in this instance is a zoology class, which is 1 term, which is a half a credit. It's a half a year. So hopefully that this is helpful when you get to that, when your student gets to that point of filling out what their subject was and what it equaled to in measure of time. This should be a good reference for you. We talked to students about this in seminar last week. It is really important that a student thinks thoroughly about how they're going to feel come term 4 in senior year. Yesterday I was doing with a student and she was like, I'm already feeling the senior slide. I was like, oh no, we're far too early for this. When they fill out their application, they're going to submit all their senior courses. And so the college is going to make a decision based on that information. If it changes, they have the right to rescind a decision. And so if a student down the road wants to make a change, it's just a little bit more legwork involved in that they would have to reach out to admissions at their schools that they've applied to and let them know about this change and see if that's going to impact their decision. And oftentimes the college won't say if it's going to impact the decision. If it's an elective for an elective, that can be a little easier to do. But some of those core classes, if your student's going to run out of gas, you really want to be thoughtful about what that second semester schedule looks like and make any changes prior to submitting an application. Step 2 is the admission essay. If your student's application requires an essay, you got to follow the directions that they offer you. So every time I have a student come to talk to me about essays, it's usually, what should I write, or what am I supposed to tell them, or what is it supposed to be about? And I think that this little quote by Amy Abrams, oh my gosh, I can't get that out, says it best. It's not really what should I be telling them, it's what does your student want to share about themselves. So I think when they're reading an essay, they're trying to find something new. Like, I feel like it's the most colorful part of an application, as well as what is your student's writing capabilities. So those are the 2 things that they want to let shine in the essay. We have some essay help on our college application process website too. So check out those links if your student is looking for just a quick way to help start, or at least brainstorming the ideas. Step 3 includes the letters of recommendation. I want to note that many schools don't require any letters of recommendation. So the first thing would be that your student should go, I always tell students just to go in a Google search and just say University of Minnesota admission requirements, and it'll bring you right to said college's page, and then you can see, and they'll see everything they need. Do they need how many years of math, English, science? It'll tell them if they need transcripts, or if they can self-report. It will tell them if they need letters of recommendation or not, test scores or not. And so that's always a great place to start. And then make a note, because if they first have to figure out if they need them, and do they need 1 teacher, 2 teachers, 1 counselor, 1 teacher, and every school will be different. And so they want to look there. If it's determined that they need a recommendation, then they can go to the counseling website at this link right here, and it'll bring you to, well, maybe I'll actually just show you quick, because it'll be important to see, because there's a parent involvement for the counselor rec. So if your student needs a teacher rec, they're going to come to this website. Right here, if they need a teacher rec, they'll fill out the teacher recommendation form. They'll ask a teacher. Oftentimes it's in a core class, maybe that they had in junior year, or some kids are even asking sophomore year, because last year was kind of a weird year. And then if they're willing to write, they'll give the teacher this form and ask them if they need anything else. If your student needs a counselor form, or counselor recommendation, they're going to need to fill out the counselor recommendation form. And then you're going to need to fill out the parent form for us. And once we have both of those, then your student will return them to the counselor, and then your student counselor will write that recommendation for them and upload it in Naviance. Excuse me. So that's the process to getting recommendations. But first you got to find out if your student needs them, and then you do the asking. You need to leave at least 10 days. Leave at least 10 days prior to a deadline for requesting it. And for requesting the transcript. And you can't request a transcript until the letters are in. So the letters, asking for letters needs to be done well in advance. So if your student even thinks they might need one, they really need to be looking at this, in the next week or 2 or 3, and then allowing their counselor enough time to write. They take a lot of time. We take pride in making them individualized to your student. So if your student wants a good letter, give your counselor enough time, and same with the teacher. It is noted that all letters are confidential, so your student will never see this letter of recommendation. It's uploaded into Naviance, and it's submitted through Naviance electronically to each college directly. And so they will never see their counselor record or their counselor recommendation or their teacher recommendation. They actually sign a FERPA agreement saying that they haven't seen this. And this is advised by the colleges. They want to know that people that have written candidly, and it gives an honest reflection of the student. So that's the process for letters of recommendation. Sometimes students are wondering, well, which one should I send? They could certainly reach out to their counselor and say, hey, can you look at my recs and see if they feel like one fits better for one college or another, if that's something that you're really kind of worried about. So that's an option. It's rarely needed because our teachers do a pretty phenomenal job of writing on behalf of our students. To figure out if your students' recs are written, like I said, they'll be uploaded into Naviance. Your students have Naviance as an app on their iPad. They use their family access to log in. When they're there, they'll just simply click on colleges, the home button, and then go under letters of recommendation. And then down here, they'll see the teacher and then if it's been submitted. So that's where they want to track if their letters are ready, because the letters are going to have to be ready in order to submit a transcript request. So because we send it in one electric little bundle. So we send the transcript, letters of recommendation, school profile, all electronically to each college that they're wanting us to send them to. So that's where they can figure out if they're ready. All right, so step 4, submitting an application. So I would say that it's in the application, make sure your student has had someone else's eyes on their application before they press submit. There's a lot that goes into that moment. And so you want it to count. You don't want any errors. And after they've been looking at so long, they don't even see the things that we might see as fresh eyes might see on it. So make sure that they are really having someone else take a fresh glance at it and then give them the go ahead to press that oh so powerful submit button. And then celebrate that moment, because it takes so much work to get there. So with your student, when they submit that, man, I don't know, have hot chocolate, take them out to Dairy Queen, I don't know, whatever gets them excited, because that's a huge accomplishment. And the stress immediately should be like, okay, it's well-deserved. So take that in and move on to the next thing that your senior has going for them once they get through the application. The easier parts are just submitting this transcript request. So we have an electronic system now that works pretty slickly. Students can simply, once they've been able to go on, if they need a letter of rec, then they'll want to go on Naviance and see that their letters are there to send. Then they can go to Epay and they can request the transcript to be sent. And then they can tell which letters they want sent to which schools. If your student doesn't need any letters of rec, then they can go on to Epay anytime and request a transcript to be sent to their schools. It is $5 per transcript, excuse me. And again, they'll need one per school. Here's just a quick visual of Epay. So on this top one, the one that's X'd out, that's actually for former students that have graduated. And you want to make sure you're working with the ones for current students only. So you'll find it on Epay. Click there. There are 2 steps, so make sure you complete both steps. First, you're going to go to the box and pay the fee. And then you're going to fill out the request saying, send it to this college, send these recommendations if they're needed. So two-step process. Oops. Again, being mindful of deadlines. We need 10 days to process them because Ms. Mar helps us kind of get them all loaded into Naviance, and she processes thousands of requests between September and December. And so for that reason, we need 10 school days to allow that time for her to process them and then send them our way so we can get in and then send them on to the school specifically. So timing is key. In the idea of testing, so this has been an interesting conversation for sure over the last 2 years now. And you've probably seen things on the news, any podcasts, shows even about it. There's things on Netflix about testing. But as of late, most schools, because of COVID and the lack of access to testing, have gone test optional. So your student can decide if they want to send their scores or not. And so what we've the general rule of thumb, despite, and including what it says here on this slide, but the general rule of thumb would be like, when in doubt, leave it out. But if your student's test score is in that medium, the median average of what the school's been getting, then it might be worth sharing. But if you're not quite sure, or if it's just on the cusp, then maybe just leave it out because you can afford to this year. Sometimes if you go test optional schools, some schools will have, an extra short answer question that they want you to answer, which can be a really nice opportunity. If you're questioning about whether your student should share test scores or not, feel free to have that conversation with your counselor. If you click on this list, you'll see there's always been at this fair, this website is called fairtest.org. There's always been schools that have always been test optional. And after this moment in time that we're in with COVID, I think we'll see a lot more schools adding themselves to that long list. So there's lots of schools that don't require any testing, and your student should check that out. The other piece to the testing, sharing test scores, would be just make sure that they don't need them for any scholarships or merit-based aid that they're going to give. It would be kind of a oxymoron if they said test optional, but they need them for, certain merit-based scholarships. But it's out there. So just make sure you read all the fine print and make sure that you know what is needed to make sure that your student gets the most out of their application. Sending scores, they do need to come directly from the provider. So if they took the SAT or an AP, they will need to go to College Board and send them directly from there. Most of our students lean into their ACT score. So just log back into ACT student. There's a button that says send scores. They'll find the colleges that they want and they'll send them accordingly. If your student has only ever taken the ACT at-wise at a high school and no other national test dates on the Saturday, then they will need to, if you click here, it'll talk about accessing your ACT test scores. They'll need to go in and create an account. So this will give them the directions on how to do that. If they have questions, but again, they can see their counselor because those are few and far between, but they're out there. I would think, I like this picture. I think taking a picture of this screenshot will bring all the stress down too. When you're at the end of the day and your student is melting down or super confused, it comes down to these three basic things. The student needs to submit an application. They need to submit test scores if they're going to, if they're not using test optional, and they need to send a transcript and or letters of recommendation. Those three things have to happen. Note about these three things. There is no specific order. So you can, if your student knows they're going to send test scores tonight, they could log into act.org and they could send their test scores to whatever schools they plan on applying to. And then that could just be done. Even though they haven't finished their application, we haven't sent transcripts. What happens is the school starts an electronic file. And then as we keep sending things with the same name, that electronic file just adds the information to the file. And once it's all there, then it says it's complete and moves it on to admissions for their review. So they can send the test scores. Or if they know that their school doesn't require any letters of recommendation and they're ready to go and they want to send their transcript, they could go to Epay tonight and you could go send these transcripts to said schools and get that done with. Or if they're done with their application, they can certainly send it. So there's no no first, second, and third. It's these three things whenever it feels right to do it. Again, you cannot submit a transcript request form. And if you need a letter of rec, you cannot or you cannot request the transcript through Epay until the letter of rec is in there. You find out if the letter of rec is in there by logging into your student's Naviance account. So these are the big three. When it gets super confusing or overwhelming or a little stressful, come back to these three things and remember there's no particular order. All right. If you leave nothing, if you remember nothing else that we talked about tonight, I want you to remember these three things. So Naviance has been a tool that we've been using throughout. Your students have had it. We've used many activities and many tools inside there since really freshman year. If your student's just starting to figure out like a college list, these are really great places to go look for college searches. Scattergrams are a great place to see, like, is this a target, safety, or reach school for my student? Because you'll see a graph and you'll see like other students from Wayzata that have attended or applied to that school, whether they've gotten in or they've been denied. And you'll be able to see their ACT and GPA scores. So those scattergrams can be a really great way to see a visual of safety, target, and reach schools. There's information about scholarships in Naviance as well. We have about 185 schools or so that will either come in person or come virtually to come and talk to your students about their school. So if your student's just trying to learn more about schools or they want to connect with an admissions officer that will read Wayzata applications, the opportunity would be to attend these visiting colleges. To figure out the college visits or to sign up or see what colleges are coming in, they can simply log into the hub. This is an app as well on their iPad. The kids are in this, I think, often. And so if they go in there, they'll see on the left-hand side, it'll say college visits, and it will bring up a host of schools by day and time. And then they can just click on the link, and then the students will be sent electronic pass that they can use to get out of their class to go attend that visit, whether it be virtual. If it's virtual, they're watching in a CCC on a big screen together. And if it's not, then they're in person, and it might be in a forum room or in the College and Career Center as well. But it will tell them where to go on their electronic pass. All right, applying for financial aid. If it's your first time, you may want to take advantage of our workshop coming up. So if you want to mark your calendar for October 27th, reservations are required. There's going to be more information in the parent newsletter coming out, but it will be October 27th from 3:30 to 6:30. And we have we have financial aid reps from local colleges that are willing to just volunteer their time to help parents and families navigate this process. It will be virtual, so you'll be assigned a Zoom time where you can meet with a financial aid rep. Takes about 30 to 45 minutes for any one family, so prepare for that and look for more information as far as a link to sign up coming soon. But October 27th, if you want to mark your calendar. As I mentioned, there's scholarship information in Naviance. Miss Musser is in the College and Career Center. If your student is looking for a scholarship, she really sees every scholarship that comes through, and she tracks them and she puts them together in Naviance. She also manages our local scholarship application packet that will come out through Google Doc in November. And so any of our local scholarships will come to all seniors. They'll have the opportunity to look through it and see which ones might pertain to them. And then they want to take time. They always always an essay required of some form or some short answer questions that they need to respond to. And then those are due January 10th. So we give students, plenty of time over a couple breaks to tend to those. And there's tens of thousands of dollars in there. So it's worth the look for students to, and the look and the time, I think, for students to get some money additionally. I want to go back to scholarships in the thought of a lot of the bigger chunk of money for scholarships comes from the actual institution that they're going to be applying to. And oftentimes those deadlines for scholarships to apply to are like December 1st, which your student may not even know if they're going to attend there. They might not even have finished their application there. So it's a weird time frame. So just be mindful that December, to look into the scholarship information by college and make those deadlines and be managing your time accordingly for your student if they're going to apply to any of those. Many schools do an automatic review for things like merit-based scholarship or aid. That's based on their grades, so the information that they would get through their application, such as their GPA and ACT. But there's additional scholarships out there for the taking that require usually another essay from your student. So be looking at that. Again, that's by the college. And like I said, you just usually larger chunks of money in those. If you need any help, your financial aid for any of your college, any college that your student is applying to is going to be your best resource. We don't do a lot of financial aid planning in our role, but the financial aid officers at any school, they'll answer literally any question. Even if you're not applying to their school, they're pretty understanding, and they will literally answer any question that you have. So take them up on that. When we met with your students, we were asking them to make a senior meeting with us. So before they left, we were hoping they would all log on and make a senior meeting. I know I've seen a handful this week, so we had some do that. But it's just nice to know wherever your student's at. And that I think I know this meeting tonight and the meeting that we met with them on Wednesday was heavily focused on the application process. But as I showed you, the data tells us that 90% of our students are needing to have this information because that's the direction they're going. But all along in seminar, we've been really stressing the importance of every student finding their own path, and that there's many options after high school. And so if your senior is having a hard time figuring out where they're at in this process, I actually want to see them more. So if that's where you're at, I really want them to know, like, you're okay too. Nobody's behind at this point. So we'd all like to see those students in our office and walk alongside them and make sure that they find, their path, that it's meaningful and intentional when they walk out our doors in June. So if they can make a senior meeting just to check in, no matter where they're at, that would be much appreciated. They can do that through the student support scheduler app on their iPad. They can come to their floor office and make an appointment as well. So those would be the two best ways to do that. If you feel like you want to join that meeting, you're welcome to join them as well. You can just call the floor office and ask to make an appointment with your student's counselor at a time that works for you. So I think those are the big things that we covered with your students. And again, that was last Wednesday. They can show you all of this information in their Canvas page. So you guys know that they all use Canvas on the regular for all their classes. They also have a senior seminar Canvas page, and it's under term 1 where they'll find all this information. I think that the idea tonight was just to make sure you had heard everything, and now you know where to go back and reference things as you start having these specific conversations with your students. So if there's a night where you're like financial aid, what is it about financial aid? Oh yeah, there's some resources in Naviance. Let's check that out. Or we got to go to the college website. Or what was it about that transcript request process? When do we do that? What do I need to have in order? Okay, go back. This will be on the website, but I bet more easily accessible will be their Canvas page where you can just click through the slides on your own and don't have to listen to this whole audio again. So know that the information is all there, easily available to you when the conversation comes up, because everybody's at a different point, and that is perfect. Please try to remind your student to stay in their own path. It's so easy to get caught up in like, so-and-so already applied to a college, or they've already been accepted to a college. And any of your students that have applied to Iowa State, like they have the best turnaround of all time. It's like 2 days. But try to keep your student from getting caught up in that. They're in their own path. We want to walk alongside them. That nobody's late at this point. Everybody's on track. So we want to meet your student where they're at. We'll leave the chat open for for a little bit here, see if we can answer all questions before you leave. Again, remember that if your student, if you have a specific question about your student, please email their counselor directly. All right. Thanks again, you guys. Like I said, we'll stay on for the rest of you. If you have other things to do, I'm sure you can get on with your night. Talk to your senior, let them know they're not alone. It'll be an emotional roller coaster. There'll be highs and lows, and we're here for all of it in between. Thanks so much.